Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial, I will cover camera control and clone IDs. So we should cover clone IDs first because that's essential to camera control. So start off with a project and delete the cat and add in a circle or something. And call it circle. Next, we want a square, and we can draw a square like this. So as you can see, these are two different costumes, and they aren't at the same place. So we can see their differences, and we can change this color to make it more obvious too. So what we want is when green flag clicked, and we want a custom block called setup, and make this run without screen refresh. So in the setup block, we want a go to 0, 0, and we will change this later, but for now just drag in a go to 0, 0, and then a point in direction 90. Set size to 100, and also a clear graphic effects. So when green flag is clicked, we want to set up. So it runs this. And then we want to hide our sprite. So like that. And then we want another custom block called clone and then ID. So what a clone is it's basically if you use this block, the create clone of myself, you can have two exact copies of your original sprite, and you can see that this one is the original sprite and this one is the clone. So we can get rid of the clone by pressing stop. And we also need a variable called clone ID for this sprite only. So what an ID is, it's basically we're giving the clone a name. So in real life, an ID is identification or something, so you want to give the clone an identification. And we want to set clone ID to something like circle. And our goal right now is to get these two things on the screen at the same time using only clones, because clones are essential to camera control, as I said before. And after we made the circle, we should use a when I start as a clone block and an if, an equal sign, and if clone ID is equal to circle. Now you may be wondering what this custom block is doing. Well, it basically lets us minimize the amount of blocks we have. So add in a wait 0 seconds and make it a blank, but that's basically 0. And then set clone ID to ID. Now we can use this custom block and call it circle. And then when I start as a clone, we want to show and to also switch costume to the circle we drew earlier. And now we have one clone and one thing on screen. Now we can just duplicate this and call it square. And square. So usually when people use clones or clone IDs, it's that they're using it's that they're making buttons or an intro or something like that. So we need a few variables now. If we're making an intro, we can call it intro x, but for this case, I'll just call it x. And for this sprite only. And then another called y for this sprite only. And another direction for this sprite only. And now we want to change this setup to a set x to 0, set y to 0, and also to set direction to 90, because that's the equivalent of this. And now we want a when I receive block and call it camera positioning. So we already have the clone ID part done, and now we're just making the camera control. So we have these two things, and we want to make the move with the camera. So in the real world, if we were to make a video, we can either move these things around like so, or we can just move the camera. And if we move the camera, these things are moving at the same speed. And then it would be really interesting to see. So if we use broadcast, we can broadcast it to all clones. And if we use a custom block, it only does it to one clone or none at all. So when I receive camera positioning, we want a go-to block, and we also want a few more variables called camera x. So this is the variable for the camera for all sprites, camera y for all sprites, and direction for all sprites. And we want an x plus camera x and a y plus camera y. And then we want a pointing direction, direction plus camera direction. And we also want to show these camera variables and change them to sliders. And then what we want to do is to give this some movement, just to prove that we can actually move now. So for our circle, right now it's at 0, 0. Or the camera is at 0, and the camera Y is also at 0. So for our circle, we want to change intro x, or x in this case, by 4. And put a repeat around it. And we also want to change this up to have a forever loop in it. Or maybe we just want a separate when green flag clicked and broadcast camera positioning. And as you can see, our circle is now moving to the right. So that's doing this. So instead of using these change x and change y blocks, we can use the change x and change y blocks that are orange, so they're variables. And now that I've proved that we can actually move, we want camera control. So if we move our camera X, you can see that both of our blue thing and our green square are moving at the same time. And this gives the quote-unquote illusion of the camera moving to the right, or moving to the left. And camera Y is the same thing. If we move the camera up, the two clones also move up. In camera direction, if we move it like this, they also spin. Now you might be wondering, well, this is completely useless. And I can show that it's not useless because if we were to make things off screen, then we can just change the camera X position or camera Y position to scroll all the way to the thing that's happening off screen. So for example, Scratch doesn't have off screens, but in the real world there are off screens. And we can also make it so that we don't have to move each and every clone, because adding a change Y here and adding another change Y here would be inefficient instead of just using the camera slider. So now how to use the camera. So the camera is not hard to use. You would use it like you would with these change Y blocks. So if I were running the project and I drag in when timer is larger than 3, then repeat 10, change camera direction, or repeat 90, change camera direction to change camera direction by 1. And now if we show the timer, you can see that it's larger than 1 and that we can actually and that it's spinning. So right now it will spin like that. But right now our camera direction is at 540 and it should start at 0. So in our setup block, add in set camera direction to 0, set camera X and camera Y to 0. And right now, if we wanted to do some 3D stuff, we can also add a camera Z for all sprites, and then a Z for this sprite only. So camera Z is basically the size. So instead of set size to 100, we want to set Z to 100 and set camera Z to 0. So the camera Z will be ran here in the camera positioning. So we want to set size to Z plus camera Z. And now it should be the same. Oh yeah, and that we can remove this. So this is just a timing thing. So if we wanted to move it at an exact time, we'll use when timer larger than something. So that's it for this tutorial. It was really easy. It will be like 2 months until I release the next one, so bye.